Acid reflux or heartburn is a really prevalent condition across the world. If you get full and become bloated very easily, and you find yourself constantly burping after meals, even trying not to spit up sometimes because it's very difficult to burp because you're so bloated and gassy. Or you find, on top of that, the food just doesn't seem to sit well. It sits in your stomach for hours, and that's what it feels like, and it just takes forever to digest, and you get full easily, and you stay full. And it's unusual to how you used to be. You are definitely dealing with this really bothersome problem. And very unfortunately, regular doctors are absolutely clueless about this condition. Nobody in traditional medicine really knows what causes it. And even to this day, doctors still believe that the problem is the overproduction of stomach acid, which to me sounds like just incredibly outdated, like 70s, book knowledge. And so, of course, they prescribe you antacids to treat the symptoms, which I'll explain in a moment, makes things completely worse. So this is a major misconception and mistake. The truth is, there is no such thing as the common high stomach acid reflux phenomenon. The only illness actually that truly causes an overproduction of acid is the extremely rare Zollinger-Ellison disease. But this only occurs in every 1 million people, and only if you have tumors inside of you. It's also the least likely illness to develop when you have tumors. So what is the problem, really? That uncomfortable bloating and excessive burping you're experiencing. That is, of course, coming from the lack of stomach acid production. The medical term is hypochlorhydria, or achlorhydria in severe cases where there is virtually no acid production going on at all. What specialists have discovered is that when the stomach doesn't produce enough acid to digest food, the esophageal sphincter at the bottom of the throat, which is responsible for keeping the barrier between the throat and the stomach closed, becomes loose. So this is one reason why we've all misunderstood minor spitting up of food or acid to be high acid levels. But actually, when you have a normal level of acid, that actually regulates that system. In North America, statistically, the prevalence is closely tied to age, but other causes are also at play. In the elderly, the studies show that 30% of adults over 60 have significant acid decline. And by age 85, that number can reach 80%. Of course, it's no surprise that stomach acid is just another one of those things that declines with age, just like sight and hearing and muscle mass and strength and your lower back support. So people get back pain. But for the rest of the population, excluding the seniors, functional medicine specialists estimate that this estimate could easily be as high as 21%. If analysts were to include all the undiagnosed cases out there, which really amounts to tens of millions of people in just America alone. So I'm going to give you some of the most common causes of acid reflux or low stomach acid, from most common to least common, along with the subsequent remedies. Let's get into that. Now, the most profound overlook that even some of the GI specialists and holistic healers aren't fully aware of are the ethers of the body. They are fundamental, crucial to our health and vitality, right? This is the qi in qigong. This is prana in Hinduism. This is Mercury, or the fifth element in Western occultism. It is a subtle energy, very subtle. It's not physical, but it's just above the physical dimension. It's the matter of matter, the substance of matter, right? This is the primordial life force behind everything that exists, all of creation. And it is responsible for the very function of creation, for sex. Nothing can be created without sex, that law of sex, that third cosmic law. And nothing can be created or sustained without this energy. So ancient Chinese medicine, as well as all the other ancient civilizations of the Golden Age, had known about the ethers of the body for centuries. This is why Chinese medicine practices look very strange and questionable to modern doctors, because the focus is primarily on addressing the causes of the illness, which, as a matter of fact, always originate in the subtle body, the etheric body, or the vital body. And I can tell you from my personal observation that the main reason people, especially men, if you've noticed, get bloated and burp a lot, can let out these big belches all the time, is because of the mismanagement of this energy, of vital energy. And what do the specialists say? They say that low stomach acid is due to a problem with the vagus nerve, some kind of nervous system problem, right? And that's true. It's a nervous system problem. But how did you get the nervous system problem? How did you damage that system? What keeps these systems functioning properly? Well, it's the ethers of the body. Rudolf Steiner talked about 4 ethers, and Hinduism teaches that there are 5 ethers, or pranas, all of which manage different parts of the body or different systems. But without going into too much detail, because that's a whole topic in itself, this is the crucial missing link in modern medicine. So aside from the obvious but less substantial causes of this problem, like being obese and having that fat kind of fold over and push on the stomach, or having a poor diet, or getting older, the main reason so many people have this problem is because of oxidative stress. It's an energy problem, right? So the most immediate and noticeable cause, as an example, is when you feel nervous in the moment, stressed in the moment. This significantly reduces your body's ability to digest and assimilate food, because the rest and digest system shuts off, right? We have a couple systems in the nervous system. We have the sympathetic and the parasympathetic, right? The sympathetic one has the sympathy for adverse situations. So it reacts and it engages, and you get stimulated with adrenaline, cortisol, stress hormones. So the parasympathetic nervous system, the one that turns that off and allows you to relax, that doesn't work anymore. That is the one that shuts off. They call that the rest and digest system. That disables, and the fight or flight response takes over. And really, even a very, very slight anxiousness can ruin your digestion, cause that indigestion and, burping, and a little bit of that kind of warm sensation, or that, around the esophageal area. If we take this a step further, though, because most of us aren't constantly nervous or noticeably anxious, but when we find ourselves going through an extended period in our life where we are constantly stressed every day, which does happen to some of us, a lot of us, as some phase in our life that we go through, either from, and this stress, whether it's nervousness or intense anger, like when we're struggling through a relationship conflict, like a relationship catastrophe, or we're constantly fighting in our family or at school with bullies or our ex-partner, or we're dealing with narcissistic abuse. So these things are happening on a daily basis. We're dealing with this conflict. It's ongoing. Our nervous system can become chronically damaged by this. So even when that conflicting phase of our life has passed, oftentimes our body is still recovering. And we don't realize this. We don't notice it. It's subtle. But then what's happening, so essential vitamins, when your body is stressed, essential vitamins and minerals like magnesium, potassium, zinc, B vitamins, especially B1, 5, and 12, are constantly being depleted because now your RPM, so to speak, is always a little bit higher. But all we notice is we just find that all of a sudden food just isn't going down very well anymore. So here's another really major common thing that everyone does on a regular basis that causes oxidative stress. It's sex and masturbation. These are by far the most likely and substantial causes of low stomach acid, or anything that affects your energy, right? Doctors say that sex and masturbation is healthy, it relieves stress, but this is just a fraction of the truth. It's not the whole. This isn't how it works in its entirety, right? This is short-sighted, because even modern scientists who specialize in longevity research understand now that the act of having sex, specifically with the orgasm, it's really that process or that function of the orgasm, not so much having sex or masturbating, although that does create excitement and stimulation. It stimulates you, but the orgasm creates oxidative stress. It does a lot of things to your body. Male balding, it's a huge contributor to that. Part of the reason why the orgasm produces stress is because what's happening is the body is signaling to itself that life's good and the genes are being spread, right? That the body thinks that the genes are being spread. So there's no need to activate survival enzymes and sirtuins, or to keep the telomeres long in the body, these longevity codes in cells, things like that. Because the going is good, so why do you need to survive, right? You're not in survival mode. So everyone, you gotta stop masturbating and having sex all the time. That's really it. This is one of the major causes of hypochlorhydria. And at the very least, try to manage how often you have orgasms. Try to keep them down to once a week, at first, right? At the most. Maybe if you do it a lot, maybe that's hard for you, maybe twice a week. If you do it a lot more than that, then bring it down to twice a week, and then once a week. This is more, I would say, acceptable and handleable for your body. And whatever sexual habits you have, it's having sex without the orgasm doesn't really contribute to this problem as much. So that's not, just in this respect, that's not such a big deal, right? It's that orgasm that causes the oxidative stress. Now, this is a Buddhist channel, so if you're a student of the Dharma or spirituality, then of course you should at some point work toward brahmacharya, chastity, reducing this activity more and more until you stop altogether. So let's get into stress a little bit more. Lots of people find that magnesium has a substantial effect on their digestive system. Some people can just take 100 or a couple hundred grams of magnesium when they're experiencing symptoms, and they're fine. And it's good to take it when you're having the symptoms because it works very strong for an hour or so, and then you don't feel the effects. If you take it in the morning, you want it to work all day. It's not necessarily going to be how it works. It probably won't work like that. I mean, it's doing something to your body the whole day maybe, but it won't help with acid reflux. If you can get by just taking magnesium every meal, that would be great because it's not too hard. That way you don't have to take 5 or 6 or 8 capsules even of betaine hydrochloride, which is HCl acid. Because people do that, people with low acid are prescribed betaine HCl, which is just acid. And because it's just a simple ingredient of acid, they have to take a lot. It's not like a little thing that causes a chemical reaction and all of a sudden your body works. No, you're just taking these like milliliters or milligrams of acid because that's how much your body produces. Like even in the hundreds of milliliters of acid, your body produces that just to break down a big meal. You know, something like 2/3 of a cup or a cup of acid if it's a very large meal. Your body's slowly producing that for that whole meal, right? That's why you have to take so many. This is normal for people with low acid. They have to take 5 or 7 of these pills per meal. But magnesium can be very effective for some people. There are many types of magnesium. That magnesium bisglycinate is a good multifunctioning one. It does make you drowsy, but it's just so powerful and it absorbs well. Magnesium malate is particularly helpful in metabolizing carbohydrates and proteins. So a high quality magnesium is well worth your money. Now let's cover the other causes of low acid. The simple ones like eating before going to sleep. The unsuspecting mistake that we often find ourselves making is eating a big meal quickly and not feeling full because we ate it quickly, and then not giving ourselves enough time to feel that sensation, then just going to bed, having a nap, or going to bed an hour or an hour and a half later, which if it's a really big meal, you need more time than that actually. And then it hits us and we feel totally stuffed, or we just feel so uncomfortable, and the food is just like sitting there fermenting as we're sleeping, and we wake up and feel terrible. Even a small meal is enough to cause a lot of digestive discomfort if you don't give yourself enough time to digest it before a nap. All the processes of the body slow down when you're resting or when you're sleeping, right? So your digestive system slows down. It's no exception. So you got to give yourself more time, give yourself 1.5 or even 3 hours before going to bed after a meal. If it's like a big Thanksgiving meal, you need that 3 hours. The amount of time you give yourself just depends on your condition and how much you ate. Or especially if it's a lot of protein and fat, or all the macros, protein, carbs, and fat together, that's hard to digest because you're mixing protein with starches. But yeah, doing this will prevent acid during sleep entirely. And another thing is poor sleep. It shouldn't come to us as a surprise that many functions of the body like the cardiovascular system and the immune system and the digestive system, can't forget that, become really compromised when you don't sleep enough. From my experience with years of insomnia, I always knew which days my digestion was going to be very bad. I was going to struggle. If I were to eat my normal 3 meals a day, my normal large meals, it would not be comfortable after, if I'm off by an hour, if I've missed an hour or so, an hour and a half, couple hours of sleep, it's pretty bad. Yeah, your digestive system needs rest too, right? So observe how your body does when you don't get enough sleep, and when you do get enough sleep, you'll probably notice there's a big difference. If you usually get 8 hours and you get 6 hours, you might notice a number of digestive problems. And not just the acid too, but the way that it digests and gets absorbed afterwards too. That's probably compromised. So diet. The kinds of foods we eat can promote acid, of course, to some extent. Doctors say to avoid spicy, deep-fried food, processed food, and caffeine, and alcohol, and smoking. And that all helps. Some doctors say avoid citrus foods, but that's actually counterintuitive because you need more acid. So lemon juice is good. Vinegar is good, especially apple cider vinegar, which I'll get into in a second. Now, here's a really interesting insight I learned about acid reflux foods. In a recent meditation, it was explained to me that the cause of my more severe achlorhydria was, in fact, canned drinks and food. My Tathagata told me this directly. I don't know what it is about canned drinks, but it was making my symptoms much worse. So I highly recommend considering this. Peculiar cause. You don't have to trust me right away. Definitely ask about it in meditation yourself and do some research online. Aside from the types of food alone, what has a much bigger impact on digestion is food combining and how much we eat, right? How much you eat is a big one. It makes all the difference. But it wasn't long ago when nutritionists hypothesized that eating carbs and protein together could be counterproductive. This is because protein and fats take longer to digest and require different enzymes than carbohydrates. So to combine all three of these food groups at once could be challenging. With this consideration, the solution would be to eat fats and protein together. That's a really good one. Because they digest well as a pair, and to eat carbs separately if you can. This practice works well with a keto or intermittent fasting diet, since the body needs more carbohydrates in the evening to refuel itself during sleep. In a similar way, eating and drinking separately also makes a very big difference, because you're not diluting your stomach with liquids. That's a really important one. If you can get used to just drinking when you're thirsty and eating when you're hungry, and not doing the same both at the same time, that not diluting yourself, will help a lot. If your body can stay healthy with less food, then just do that. Eat less, eat smaller meals, maybe more frequently if you're hungry. That's another easy fix. And caffeine, that promotes acid reflux too, because when we drink it or when we consume it in some way, it really just causes stress, right? Our body, it's a stimulant. So it causes stress, and we excrete cortisol and adrenaline again to get that immediate stimulating boost. So that can make a difference. Consider that one. And so, like I said, being overweight, if you have a lot of fat around your belly, that can supposedly push the belly and stomach up a bit and promote the opening of the esophageal sphincter, or just push gas around and causing you to burp more. Now, there's some other less, I would say, less typical but common causes. There's something called SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. SIBO tends to come from eating a lot of sugar on a regular basis, or being constipated frequently for weeks or months. This makes the stomach turn to its bacterial stores to break down food through fermentation, leading to bloating and gas and slow digestion. Then there's something called H. pylori, which is surprisingly common in bacteria and is responsible for some cases. This bacteria produces an enzyme called, I think, urease or urease, and that neutralizes stomach acid. If you address the aforementioned causes of acid and find that you're still having problems, then it could be that you have a bacterial infection or a yeast infection like Candida. So it's worth checking out. If you suspect this, you have to search online for a health organization that provides bacterial and yeast stool test services, since many doctors don't understand acid reflux to be low stomach acid and will only suggest all sorts of tedious testing that is things like capsule endoscopy, right? A camera inside the gastrointestinal tract, and they're not going to find anything. And they're going to prescribe antacids, which make things 3 times worse. And then you can develop pneumonia and osteoporosis and B12 deficiency. It actually creates a chronic low stomach acid where you can't even produce it anymore, like just from taking it for a while. So in the moment, it's of course neutralizing, but then it's also just teaching your body to not produce it. Yeah, you're gonna have malnutrition as well from that. And it makes the pharmaceutical industry a lot of money because these things, right? Like Tums, Rolaids, Nexium, Prevacid, Prilosec, Zegerid, I don't know how to pronounce these, but Gaviscon, and it's gone. Purple Pill have the leading sales, and yet they don't work. In some cases, a suppressed immune system from hypothyroidism can create an alkaline environment in the body, resulting in low stomach acid. So now that we've covered the causes, here's some immediate remedies. Apple cider vinegar. Any acid promotes promotes stomach acid production. But apple cider vinegar is typically what's needed because it's strong. It's stronger. There are many ways you can consume it, which are beyond the scope of this presentation. But for digestion, it's recommended to drink between 1 teaspoon and a tablespoon diluted in water with 1:5 or a 1:10 dilution ratio. Some say you should take this before you eat, but this can cause a lot of upset because there's nothing in you and you're taking this acid, right? So it's best to take it during or immediately after you eat a meal, because then your food will absorb it. Your body will recognize it as a good thing. And this can be done with every meal, and it also helps with insulin response. You never want to consume dietary acids like apple cider vinegar or lemon juice, or especially betaine hydrochloride or the apple cider vinegar on an empty stomach because they're very strong. They're meant to be consumed with food. And now onto betaine hydrochloric acid. This is a natural and really effective, powerful acid supplement, as I mentioned. It works within minutes of taking it, right? That capsule starts to dissolve and then the stuff gets released and it starts to break down the food. Most people with acid need to take, with hypochlorhydria, they need to take between 5 and 7 capsules per meal. And they tested this with the standard meal back in the day, which was like a burger and fries and a glass of milk. And people needed, like 6 capsules, something like that. Because it's a lot of food, right? Plus with the milk, you're going to dilute what you're eating. It sounds like a lot, but it's not. It's not like a chemical reaction. You're just taking the acid that your body is not producing, and it's a lot of it that you need. Since betaine is so powerful, it must be taken during or right after a meal. So it can start working on the food right away and not work against an empty stomach. You can, in fact, take as many of these capsules as you like, even 10 or 15 per meal, which is what people with achlorhydria could theoretically do, since the stomach produces over 100 milligrams of acid per meal. But at that point, it becomes really inconvenient and challenging and risky. So it's always better to treat the cause of your acid reflux rather than the symptoms alone. In addition to the insight I received about canned drinks and food, I was also told to drink Diet Coke to help with my bothersome post-meal burps. Diet Coke of all things. When I looked up Coke and colas online, I learned that it's pretty much the only pop that contains phosphoric acid. That's what I discovered. Then it made sense to me. So I've been drinking it after meals and it does help a bit. I'm not a big Coke drinker, so it was only recently when I learned that actually Coca-Cola also has their gold branded Diet Coke brand, which it doesn't have sugar nor caffeine. So it's that one with that gold label or kind of brass colored label. So this was a great option for me because I still drink coffee, but I'm supposed to cut back on my caffeine levels, so it's perfect.